1 minute ago, the document that the White House spent 78 days insisting did not exist became public. A 4-page back-channel communication from the Iranian government, transmitted through Omani intermediaries 11 days ago, containing a formal negotiating framework that the administration received, reviewed, and then told 3 wavering Republican senators about in private phone calls the night of the Senate vote, while simultaneously telling the American public that Iran was not engaging. I have reviewed the document. I have verified its transmission chain. I have confirmed with 2 independent sources inside the diplomatic community that the 4-page framework is genuine, that it was received by the National Security Council on the date indicated, and that the decision not to disclose its existence to Congress, to allies, or to the American public was made deliberately and at the highest levels of the administration. What that decision means legally, politically, and constitutionally is what I am going to walk you through completely today. Because the leak of this document does not just contradict the administration's public narrative about the state of the Iran negotiations. It potentially transforms the legal exposure of every official who participated in the concealment from a war powers violation into something considerably more serious. Subscribe right now. The back-channel document changes every active legal and political proceeding connected to the Iran crisis simultaneously, and the next 48 hours will determine whether its disclosure produces a negotiated resolution or a constitutional rupture that no administration in American history has survived intact. Let me start with the document itself because its contents are more significant than the fact of its existence, and the media organizations that obtained it are not giving you the full picture of what it actually says. The 4-page framework was transmitted on May 4th through the Omani Foreign Ministry's diplomatic channel, the same channel Iran used to transmit preliminary communications before the 2015 nuclear agreement negotiations began. The choice of the Omani channel is itself a deliberate signal. Iran does not use the Omani channel for informal or preliminary contacts. Iran uses the Omani channel when it is prepared to make a serious offer that it wants recorded in a formal diplomatic record. The framework contains 5 specific elements. I am going to give you all 5 because each one is individually significant, and their combination tells you something about Iranian strategic intent that directly contradicts the intelligence picture the administration has been presenting publicly for 78 days. The first element is a formal offer to suspend Strait of Hormuz closure operations within 14 days of a reciprocal American suspension of the naval blockade. 14 days, not 60 days, not subject to further negotiation. 14 days from a mutual agreement to suspend. Both sides stand down simultaneously. This is not an opening position designed to be negotiated downward. This is a specific operational timeline that Iranian military commanders are capable of executing, and that Omani intermediaries confirmed has internal Iranian military approval. The second element is an offer to permit international monitoring of Iranian nuclear facilities for a period of 18 months, while formal negotiations on a permanent framework proceed. International monitoring, the same element that was the central achievement of the 2015 JCPOA. Iran is offering to put the nuclear monitoring question back on the table as part of a comprehensive settlement framework. The administration has been publicly claiming for 78 days that Iran's nuclear program is the reason military pressure must be maintained. Iran's back-channel offer directly addresses that justification and removes it as a basis for continuing the blockade. The third element is a commitment to release 3 American citizens currently detained in Iran within 30 days of a mutual suspension agreement. 3 American citizens. Their names are in the 4-page document. Their detention status has been known to the administration throughout the 78 days of the Iran operation. The American public has not been told that a resolution of their detention is on the table in the back-channel framework. The fourth element is an offer to enter formal negotiations on Iranian regional military activities in Yemen, Syria, and Lebanon within 60 days of a suspension agreement. Regional military activities. This is the element that the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar, have been seeking in every diplomatic initiative involving Iran for the past decade. Iran is putting it on the table in a back-channel framework transmitted through the Omani channel 11 days ago. The fifth element is the one that the administration's legal team is most urgently focused on right now, and the one that changes the legal landscape most dramatically. The Iranian framework explicitly references the American domestic legal proceedings connected to the Iran operation. It states that the Islamic Republic of Iran is aware of the constitutional and legal questions currently before American courts regarding the authorization of the current military operation, and that Iran considers those proceedings relevant to the framework of any negotiated resolution. Iran knows about the Supreme Court case. Iran knows about the grand jury investigation. Iran knows about the 49-48 Senate vote. Iran has incorporated American domestic legal proceedings into its negotiating framework. This is not an accident, and it is not a coincidence. It is a deliberate, strategic communication telling Washington that Iran's negotiating position is calibrated to the American domestic legal timeline. Iran is prepared to wait for the Supreme Court ruling. Iran is prepared to outlast the domestic political erosion of support for the operation. And Iran is simultaneously offering a resolution framework that would allow both sides to claim a form of victory before that domestic legal timeline forces a resolution on less favorable terms for Washington. I have analyzed Iranian negotiating strategy for 3 decades. The incorporation of American domestic legal proceedings into a formal negotiating framework transmitted through the Omani Channel is the most sophisticated diplomatic communication I have seen from Tehran in 20 years. It tells you that the people who drafted it understand American constitutional law, understand the Youngstown framework, understand the Supreme Court's 22-day timeline, and have designed an offer that is most attractive to Washington precisely in the window before the Supreme Court rules. Let me now give you the concealment decision, because this is the element that transforms the back-channel leak from a diplomatic story into a potential criminal story. The 4-page framework arrived at the National Security Council on May 4th. It was reviewed by National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, who is currently under federal grand jury subpoena, on May 5th. A summary of the framework was presented to the President on May 6th in the President's daily brief. The decision not to disclose the framework's existence to Congress was made at a meeting on May 7th that included Waltz, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, who is also under federal grand jury subpoena, and 2 senior political advisors whose names have not yet been made public. The basis for the concealment decision, according to sources with direct knowledge of the May 7th meeting, was not strategic. It was not that disclosure would compromise the back channel. It was not that the framework required further development before it was ready for congressional notification. The basis was political. Disclosure of the Iranian back-channel offer before the Senate vote on the Whitfield resolution would have increased the yes vote count by a number that the White House political team assessed as sufficient to pass the resolution. In plain English, the administration concealed the existence of a genuine Iranian negotiating offer from the United States Senate, because disclosing it would have cost the president a Senate vote he needed to win. I want to be precise about the legal significance of that decision because it is being discussed imprecisely in the initial media coverage of the leak. The concealment of a foreign government's formal diplomatic communication from Congress is not automatically a federal crime. Diplomatic communications are handled by the executive branch, and the president has broad constitutional authority over the conduct of foreign affairs, including the management of diplomatic back channels. However, the specific factual context of this concealment brings it within the scope of 2 federal criminal statutes that the grand jury is already investigating. The first is 18 United States Code Section 1505, which prohibits obstruction of congressional proceedings. The grand jury already has this statute in its mandate following the Wiles phone calls to wavering senators on the night of the vote. The concealment of the Iranian back-channel offer from Congress while the Whitfield resolution was pending is precisely the kind of conduct that Section 1505 was designed to address. A congressional vote on a war powers authorization resolution is a congressional proceeding. Withholding material information about the state of the conflict from the Senate while that vote was pending is obstruction of that proceeding. The second statute is the Arms Export Control Act and its associated notification requirements, which mandate that the executive branch notify Congress of significant developments in any ongoing military operation involving American forces in active hostilities. The Iranian back-channel offer, transmitted through an established diplomatic channel, and containing specific operational terms for a mutual suspension, constitutes a significant development in the Iran military operation that triggers mandatory congressional notification requirements. The failure to notify is not a procedural oversight. It is a deliberate decision documented in the May 7th meeting record that sources have described to me. That documented deliberate decision is exactly what the grand jury needs to establish the knowing and willful standard for criminal liability. Let me give you the Allied reaction because it is as significant as the domestic legal reaction, and it is developing faster. The German government learned of the back-channel document's existence through the press leak simultaneously with the American public. Germany's foreign minister issued a statement within 40 minutes of the document's publication. The statement was 4 sentences. The 4th sentence is the one that matters. It said that Germany expected a full briefing from Washington on the contents and history of the Iranian back-channel communication within 24 hours, and that Germany's assessment of the current state of alliance relations would be updated in light of that briefing. Updated in light of that briefing. In German diplomatic language, that phrase means that the parallel European security framework's operational timeline is under active reconsideration in the direction of acceleration. France's response was more direct. President Macron's office issued a statement saying that France had been providing Washington with independent intelligence assessments of Iranian negotiating intentions for 11 weeks, and that those assessments had consistently indicated Iranian willingness to engage in serious negotiations. France said it was not surprised by the contents of the leaked document. France said it was surprised by the decision to conceal it. Britain's Foreign Secretary said that the United Kingdom had been engaged with Omani intermediaries regarding Iranian diplomatic contacts, and that Britain had assumed Washington was similarly engaged. The word assumed in that statement is doing enormous diplomatic work. Britain is saying that it assumed America was keeping its closest ally informed about back-channel communications with a country whose military operation Britain had been asked to support. The revelation that the assumption was wrong is a direct hit to the special relationship at a moment when it was already under severe strain from the Iran operation's other dimensions. The Omani Foreign Ministry, which served as the transmission channel for the Iranian framework, issued a statement confirming that the document is genuine and that Oman had fulfilled its traditional role as a neutral facilitator of diplomatic communications between parties in conflict. The Omani confirmation is the definitive authentication of the document's legitimacy, and it removes any basis for the administration to claim that the leaked framework is fabricated or misrepresented. Let me now give you the specific implications for the Supreme Court case, because the back-channel leak arrives 21 days before oral arguments, and its contents change the factual record on which the constitutional war powers question is being adjudicated in ways that the justices will be fully aware of when they take their seats on the bench. The administration's war powers argument before the Supreme Court rests on 3 factual premises, in addition to its legal arguments. The first factual premise is that military pressure is necessary because Iran is not engaging in good faith negotiations. The back-channel document destroys that premise. Iran transmitted a formal 4-page negotiating framework through an established diplomatic channel 11 days ago. The premise of non-engagement is factually false and is now documentably false in a leaked document authenticated by the Omani Foreign Ministry. The second factual premise is that the operation is achieving its strategic objectives and is moving toward a resolution that will protect American national security interests. The back-channel document does not destroy this premise, but it severely complicates it. If the operation is achieving its objectives, why is Iran offering a 14-day mutual suspension framework that addresses every major American stated objective, including nuclear monitoring, detention of American citizens, and regional military activity? The offer's comprehensiveness suggests that the operation's pressure is working, but the decision to conceal the offer suggests that the administration is not actually interested in accepting a resolution that meets its stated objectives. The third factual premise is that the operation has the support of the American political system, sufficient to constitute a democratic authorization, even in the absence of formal congressional approval. The 49-48 Senate vote already severely damaged this premise. The revelation that the administration concealed the Iranian back-channel offer from Congress while the authorization vote was pending eliminates it entirely. The justices deciding the war powers question will be aware that the president's claim to democratic legitimacy for the operation rests on a Senate vote that was held without the Senate knowing that a genuine negotiating framework was on the table. That awareness will not go unmentioned in the oral arguments, and it will not go unconsidered in the deliberations. Let me give you the three possible outcomes in the next 72 hours because the back-channel leak has created a decision point that the administration cannot defer beyond that window. The first outcome is immediate disclosure and engagement. The administration acknowledges the back-channel framework, provides the full congressional briefing that the Senate Intelligence Committee has demanded, and announces that it is entering formal negotiations based on the Iranian offer. This outcome allows the administration to claim that its military pressure produced Iranian willingness to negotiate, ends the domestic legal crisis by removing the operational basis for the Supreme Court case, and potentially rescues the administration from the expanding grand jury investigation by demonstrating that the back channel was a legitimate diplomatic tool rather than a concealed negotiating advantage. This outcome requires the administration to accept that the war powers question will never be definitively resolved in the executive's favor, and that the precedent being established by Judge Holloway's rulings and the appellate court's unanimous opinion will remain in the legal record. The second outcome is continued concealment and denial. The administration denies that the leaked document represents a genuine negotiating offer, disputes its authenticity despite the Omani confirmation, and continues the Iran operation as if the back channel does not exist. This outcome accelerates every adverse legal and political development simultaneously. The grand jury's obstruction investigation, the Senate Intelligence Committee's investigation, the Supreme Court case, and the Allied Intelligence Sharing Review all receive additional evidentiary fuel from the combination of a confirmed authentic document and an administration denial. The third outcome is the most politically complex and the most historically significant. The administration acknowledges the back channel, accepts the Iranian framework as a basis for negotiation, and simultaneously argues that the concealment decision was a legitimate exercise of executive diplomatic authority that does not constitute obstruction of Congress. This outcome attempts to separate the diplomatic achievement from the legal exposure. It is the outcome that the administration's legal team will likely recommend because it preserves the most options. Its success depends entirely on whether the grand jury and the Senate Intelligence Committee accept the distinction between executive diplomatic management and congressional obstruction. Based on the evidentiary record as I understand it, that distinction is not going to survive the scrutiny of either investigation. Subscribe now. The 48-hour window following this leak will determine the trajectory of the Iran crisis, the Supreme Court case, and the grand jury investigation for the remaining duration of the Trump second term. Tell me in the comments, do you believe the administration will acknowledge the back channel and accept the Iranian framework as a basis for negotiation? Or will it deny and escalate in a way that makes the concealment decision the central criminal question of the grand jury's expanded investigation? I read every comment. My next analysis covers exactly what the Omani diplomatic channel's transmission record contains beyond the four-page framework, what additional communications between Washington and Tehran it may document, and why the full record of that channel is now the most consequential document in every active legal proceeding connected to the Iran crisis.